100. Depravity or natural goodness. Chalcedon Report number 137, January 1977. We have seen that the doctrine of selective depravity is very dangerous because, while having a seemingly biblical doctrine of sin, it shifts the area of sin from all men to some men. Sin is localized in a class or race. We must now turn to another form of this same pernicious and dangerous doctrine, one inherited from the Enlightenment. Enlightenment thinkers believed in the natural goodness of man, provided the man was a philosophe like themselves, a rationalist and a skeptic. Religion meant for them superstition and evil. For most men, their natural goodness was only potential because they were influenced by religion. For the intellectual and scientific elite, the philosophe, natural goodness was actual because they had abandoned the superstition of the Christian religion. This doctrine has been, in various forms, a persistent factor in modern history. Marxism, with its dictatorship of the proletariat, Fabian socialism and democracy, with its guidance by scientific planners, and National Socialism, with its leadership principle, are forms of this belief in selective depravity. If we believe in selective depravity, we then believe also in selective leadership by an elite class, race, or group. In neo-Orthodox thought, there was a supposed revival of the biblical doctrine of original sin. Karl Barth and Reinhold Niebuhr, for example, seem to echo the Orthodox doctrine of man and his sin. Their doctrine of sin, however, was only formally theological, but actually sociological. An example of this was Reinhold Niebuhr's The Illusion of World Government, 1949, which first appeared in the April 1949 issue of Foreign Affairs. Men assume, Niebuhr held, that because world order is desirable, it is therefore attainable. There is no proof, he held, that there is either the moral ability of mankind to create a world government by an act of will, nor of the political ability of such a government to integrate a world community in advance of a more gradual growth of the social tissue, which every community requires more than government. The underlying presupposition and faith of Niebuhr are here revealed. There is no theological moral inability, but only an historical inability. Given enough time, an international community and government will develop. There are echoes of Edmund Burke here. The disability of sin is not theological and does not require regeneration. It is sociological and requires simply the passing of time. Of course, Niebuhr and Barth had no real answer to breakdowns of national and local communities because of sin. For them, an historical development became a natural asset because there was, for them, no truly supernatural grace in history. The centuries of Christian grace and developments were, for them, a natural asset, a product of an evolving history, which would grow a new social tissue, the world community. Of course, some of them, as superior men, had already developed that social tissue and could therefore guide the world into the new order. Because, for them, creation by God's supernatural act is a myth, theological concepts of sin and grace are all mythical. Sin is sociological, and grace and power come from the context of history. Adolf Hitler, that clear-cut theologian of humanism, stated the implications of historical rather than supernatural grace. As a super-democrat, he told Chancellor Brüning at the end of 1931, "The fundamental thesis of democracy runs, all power issues from the people. There can be no law or right beyond the will of the people. The majority will of the people can thus abolish any constitution, previously granted rights, or laws, and do no wrong, because there is no power right or grace Hitler held beyond the people. It is not enough to hold to the possible or actual depravity of all men, as some neo-Orthodox thinkers have done. Is man's sin theological, that is, against the sovereign and living God, or is it sociological, against human society? Sin is against law, against ultimate power and authority. If that ultimate creating power is society, then salvation is social salvation, and it involves, as it did for Nebuah, a world community. If that ultimacy is in society, then grace, saving grace, can only come from society, and hence the importance to Bat and Nebuah of creating a new world order. We can then understand why, for political rather than theological man, the problem of social salvation by a social gospel becomes so urgent. For them, it is man's only hope. The doctrine of selective depravity thus has 2 or 3 important presuppositions. First, it holds that all sin is, in essence, sociological, against society, rather than theological, against God. Second, it holds that some enlightened ones are aware of this fact and are living in terms of a world community which is to be beyond sin, beyond good and evil, and they are thus empowered to deal with those who are less enlightened. This can lead to a third presupposition, and usually does, that power to the people means power to the philosophe, the enlightened ones. David, however, saw the meaning of sin more clearly. It is, in essence, always theological, because the law broken is God's law. Therefore, of his sin of adultery with Bathsheba and his murder of Uriah, he declared of God, "Against thee only have I sinned and done this evil in thy sight." Psalm 51, verse 4. It was because it was God's law he had broken that David knew the enormity of his offence against Uriah and Bathsheba. The only true doctrine of depravity is thus theological. Only when we face up to the meaning of sin can we also know what grace is, and whence it comes. The harvest of the Enlightenment and neo-Orthodox doctrine of sin, which now prevails everywhere in the councils of state, is an evil harvest, and a bloody one.